in the Australian city of Melbourne, sparking outrage among the local Indian community and political leaders. The statue, located in a public park and symbolising Gandhi's message of peace and non-violence, was found missing earlier this week. Police say they are investigating the incident and reviewing CCTV footage from the surrounding area to identify those responsible. Community groups have condemned the theft, calling it a disrespectful act against a global icon revered for his role in India's independence and his advocacy of non-violent resistance. Authorities say efforts are underway to recover the statue and secure the site to prevent further incidents. Dr. Chadha joins us once again in just a minute. Dr. Chadha, thank you very much. Of course, this follows a flurry of events. Both of these incidents follow, of course, that devastating shooting on Bondi Beach in Sydney. We've seen multiple attacks that have minority driven violence in Australia over the recent few months. What does this say about the mood of the country right now, and how tense it is, and about multicultural harmony in the country of Australia?
Absolutely. I mean, very sorry state of affairs that, a country like Australia that has maintained significant amount of law and order for a very long time is now under extreme pressure from these extremist groups, whether they are religious extremist groups or ingrown extremist groups that are in some way opposing multiculturalism or opposing Aboriginal identity in one way or another. I mean, this is quite discouraging, but also very discouraging is the fact that there seems to be a very unchecked unchecked behavior, let's say unchecked response towards these elements or these extremist activities. We do not hear of a lot of follow-up on it, or we do not, I mean, probably the government is taking cognizance of it, but it is coming a bit too slow. I think Australia currently is under both domestic pressure and also diplomatic pressure as a result of what happened with Mahatma Gandhi's statue. And I mean, let's not forget, Mahatma Gandhi is no longer one of those icons that represents only an independence movement, right? He represents so much more, including his ideas of peace, non-violence, including now that he is an Indian icon in a way, which the Indian Ministry of Foreign Affairs has very actively over decades. They've sent busts or statues of Mahatma Gandhi to several countries to establish a good, healthy, friendly relationship with all of these partners that India is making across the world. So having Mahatma Gandhi's statue targeted globally or targeted in Australia cannot just be seen as an act of people trying to sell off a metal for scrap value or something like that. It is more like a targeted attack on India's cultural asset or an act of cultural vandalism. I mean, was this statue in itself very, very important? I mean, it was a bronze statue, right? It was gifted by Indian Council for Cultural Relations to Australia. So it does hold a lot of symbolic and diplomatic value. But what's more important here is that we must understand that this is just one, as you mentioned, it is just one in a series of attacks, a series of vandalism-related incidents that have been occurring in Australia. And the response unfortunately from both sides is deeply distressing. I mean, India keeps raising alarm on these incidents, whether they are linked with Khalistan or not. And on the Australian side, they just seem to be multiplying in one way or another. So, I mean, I look at this as not a standalone incident. I look at this as, like you mentioned, generating some sort of a wider mood of fringe groups in the country who are trying to hijack the overall political environment in Australia. But overall, a very, very sorry state of affairs, given that now cultural assets and cultural identities are being targeted.
There is, of course, evidence that anti-India sentiment has been on the rise in the Western world. You've got it's on the rise in the United States, in Canada, in the United Kingdom, in Europe. How does this affect the Indian diaspora's sense of safety and belonging?
Absolutely. I mean, you said it spot on. It does impact, I would say, the confidence. It does impact, people's sense of cultural identity and being able to express that identity abroad. And this, I would say, this does not just hold true for the Indians. It does it symbolizes a lot of anxiety amongst the diaspora and all of the international diaspora that exists anywhere else in the world. So, I mean, for me, it would be wonderful to hear from Australia, probably stricter rules, more surveillance. I mean, from what I hear about the investigations, which are still ongoing, they are looking at CCTV footages. They are trying to see who did it for what motive. But we would not know unless those things come out in the news. However, I mean, what I would also be very encouraged seeing is that if the community as a whole tries to maintain peace, not react to a lot of these incidents strongly, because remember, let's not forget, a lot of these identity-based attacks are usually meant to stir negative emotions. So as long as people can maintain their peace and calm and trust the authorities and, let the law take its course, I think that would be the best course of action. But it is definitely a lesson for, not just Australia, but also rest of the world, that there is a rise in extremist activity. There is a rise in, instrumentalization of these identity politics in favor of more violence. And, we need stricter laws. We definitely need way more surveillance and way more safety and assurance that needs to be provided to diaspora communities abroad.
Dr. Chadha, as always, it's a great pleasure to speak to you. Thank you so much for taking the time in joining us here on the programme. We now move on to our next story and some news from the tech world. And a major